Next one we're going to talk about, and we've discussed in the past when it was just being teased to us in assortment listings and just computer listings. We have our first look at Transformers War for Cybertron Siege Leader Class Shockwave. And, I mean, Shockwave, I've always said, is easily one of my favorite Decepticon characters, if not my favorite Decepticon character. And anyone who's owned the Masterpiece toy, I felt like we kind of just peaked there. Somehow, I feel like Hasbro, what they did is they said, hey, you know that Masterpiece toy you paid like $130 for? Yeah, we're going to be able to give you that for like leader class price, and then we're going to give you a whole bunch of extra junk on it so we could make it legal.
Well,
and I'll explain what I mean by that afterwards. But
there's that, and then there's like, remember that Generations one we did where it turns into a ship? Yeah, we brought that back too.
Well, let me say there's a lot of things going on here. Like, first of all, we'll start with like the crazy battleship mode, which is it's pretty much like Wendell said, they took the War for Cybertron Shockwave concept where he was some kind of nondescript battleship / big cannon Yamato looking thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, a whole bunch of parts on him that attach and everything, that whole weaponizer kind of concept and everything. And you then strip all of that stuff off and you flip that. Like if you take off all those pieces off of him, but you still have the main transformed gimmick, you flip it over and it's the gun mode Shockwave. And it's pretty much Hasbro's way to go, here's how we're going to be able to release a gun transformer legally. Which is, if you look at the toy in its spaceship mode, like where the cockpit of what would be the whatever you want to call it, the battleship, that's where the handle for the gun mode is. And all of these pieces, by the way, come off. So there's a virgin 100% Masterpiece-esque looking Shockwave under all of that, or even a G1 Shockwave, if you will. So you take off all those pieces, you have that. Then on top of that, when you transform, again, that gun Shockwave, you then have a very G1. I mean, it looks like the Masterpiece toy, short of some articulation and electronics and stuff, but It looks spectacular. But what's cool is then you take all those extra pieces, and then it turns into like an extra kind of like concept. Like here they're showing it. Oh, he's riding on top of it, like it's some kind of
like it kind of. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like, sometimes when you have like a bunch of like small toys as a kid and you're kind of like, well, I'm going to substitute this thing as that thing. And you just make up your own thing with it. You make up your own little gimmick with it. So like how you said before, you had a G1 blaster, and even though it wasn't a base, it didn't have a base mode, you made it into a base mode for your Micromaster. You just made it work.
Well, I think also
that's what it kind of reminds me of a lot.
I think what they're trying to do here, in all honesty, it's not something that's kind of made up from left field, is they went, okay, so we have all these extra pieces that we're engulfing the base the base alt mode gun mode with, so we can make it legal. So it turns into a spaceship. It could then become a gun when you strip off all those pieces. Yeah. And then what do you do with all those pieces when it's in robot mode? Well, there's two things you could do with that. This combined spaceship mode almost reminds me a little bit of when Shockwave had a companion in Dark of the Moon, where he had his little tentacle creature. So it kind of plays up with that too, where it's like, oh hey, he also had that like crazy tentacle creature thing that at one point he was like kind of riding on top of. And when they did the toy for like Cyberverse 1.0, we'll call it, the Dark of the Moon miniature figure line, the Legion class line, they also included like some kind of weird tank, accessory thing that attaches to him that was a separate base. So it kind of plays that up in a minor way. And then the final thing, which when I first saw this image, I was like, what the heck is going on here? And it's like and then you could take apart all those pieces and attach it to him, Victory Saber style, if you will. That's probably the best way to put it. It's just
not big convoy, fire convoy.
Fire convoy style, exactly. And
this is the last thing any Autobot really needs, a super Shockwave.
This is like Shiva Shockwave, Goddess Shiva, multiple arms, craziness. And Shockwave is, it's like he had the one laser arm, now he has like 3 laser arms here. It's just there's a lot going on. And again, it's a little over the top. And I imagine not a lot of people are going to be displaying him this way, but it's probably them going. I just see exactly how Hasbro was doing this. They were probably sitting in their design room and they were going, we just want to do G1 Shockwave, but we can't do G1 Shockwave.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, what could we put all over this to get away with that? Well, we have our weaponizer idea where you can put parts on a guy and make. So they did that, and then they built around that. They're like, well, why don't we do it that the alt mode makes a space shuttle, but if you take it all off, you'll still have that gun under it. Okay, but then what do we do those pieces when we take them off? And then they just, the creative balls started rolling from there, and you got all the craziness in the end. Again, it's the play value, and for a leader class to do all of that's definitely worth it. But again, under all of that is a amazingly G1 accurate G1 Shockwave that I can't wait to get this, because I want to put it next to my masterpiece G1 Shockwave and just really compare what $130 American goes up against. I guess in this point it'll be $50 American to $60 American for the leader class price point, but just to see what a difference it'll make. But still, it looks spectacular. Again, I'm kind of biased because it's also a character that I really enjoy. But
I definitely like the fact that we've gotten to a point where we just like, all right, let's make the perfect one at this crazy high price point. Let's see what we can do if we dialed it back and what other extra stuff we can put into this thing.
Yeah.
I think it's like a good exercise of engineering and just like, let's challenge ourselves. Like how you hear about when people do horror movies and they're always under budget and they have to make it work. Like, think about the movie Jaws, where Steven Spielberg was supposed to use this big mechanical shark, but it just never worked and it looked terrible on film. So what he did was he just didn't show the shark and let the music kind of bring up in your mind, oh my goodness, the shark is there, the shark is there, the shark is there kind of thing. So I think that's pretty cool. It's just that you play around with the budget a little bit and you could see how you can push it to see how close you can get to that extremely accurate version, but then add all these other cool things that don't hinder it. It does. Like, one thing I'm looking at this is that I don't think there's, I'm assuming there's no light gimmick, audio gimmick.
I don't think there's any light up accessories or anything of that matter. I think that used to be a very common thing in leader class toys that kind of justified that price point. It's like, well, since we're at that price point budget, might as well put that in. I think more this time around, it's just an emphasis on a gimmick, just like how a leader class with the previous Power of the Primes was more about evolution rather than lights and sounds, which would have been something from, let's say, the movie lines of previous years and stuff like that.
And I kind of like it when it doesn't have that. So that means you can kind of keep it pure in the sense of, hey, this transforms into this goes into that, and it's not being hindered because they have to stick in electronics, they have to stick in the lighting gimmick, they have to stick in tubing so that the wires can get to somewhere where it wouldn't normally work, Well,
especially nowadays, Hasbro, when they do want to do light and sound stuff, they actually have separate lines for that.
Yeah.
So, like, they don't have to work. Where it used to be back in the day, it's like, this is the one Optimus. For this one specific Optimus, there's only so much we could do with it, so they run with that. Where today, it's like, well, if we want to have a Bumblebee that makes lights and sounds or dances, we'll have a Bumblebee specifically for that.
Yeah.
And it's the same. And again, I love what's going on here. It's again a good exercise in the evolution of engineering. I'm reminded of like when that very first MP Optimus Prime came out, MP01, and then a couple of years later, the Robot Master line did their scaled, pretty much like their downscaled version of it, showing like what they were capable of a high price point, but to do it in a low price point too, and do the same thing. Again, this is great. We'll definitely talk more about it hopefully when I get this in hand. I know if you go, I don't want to promote like my other YouTube channel, but like if you go online and you check on YouTube, I did a huge review of Masterpiece Shockwave and his history and stuff of that toy. And I really go through like just the engineering cues and stuff, going back to the original Shockwave and even Shockwave. And I definitely, when I pick up this figure, I'm gonna have to stop myself from doing the same thing, because that My Shockwave review, I think it was like 30 minutes long. It was it was a long review. I remember that. I just remember I was
a lot of Shockwaves.
Well, it's not only that because I was really going through like just the history and the engineering. So it's something where it's like, man, when I get this, it's going to be another 30-minute review. It's going to be one of those just going like, here's all the things they did there. Here's all the things they did there. So this is cool. Definitely look forward to it. Let us know what you think.